Welcome back, everyone. Today we are going to focus on writing equations of lines, and we're going to use some familiar topics like slope-intercept form, your slope, your y-intercept, and finding slope, or the rate of change between 2 points. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is number 1, but it says write in slope-intercept form, so we need to review what slope-intercept form is. So slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where m stands for your slope and b stands for your y-intercept. This is definitely something you want to memorize because you will be using this a lot. Okay, so in number 1 it says write the equation of a line in slope-intercept form that has a slope of -2 and a y-intercept of 0, 7. Okay, so this is telling us our slope is -2 and our y-intercept is 7. So basically it's telling us what our equation is right away. We know we want it to be in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, and we know m is our slope. Well, they gave us our slope of -2. Our x just stays. And our b value is our y-intercept. Well, we were given our y-intercept, which is 7. So that's about as easy as it gets right there when you're given your slope and your y-intercept. You can just go right to writing your equation. Now the next one we're going to look at is just a little bit more challenging. It says write the equation of a line in slope-intercept form that passes through 3, -7 and has a slope of 1/3. The reason this one's a little bit more difficult is because we're not given our y-intercept. We don't know what our y-intercept is. All we know is that this line passes through 3, -7. So one way you could do it is you could plot the point and use your slope to figure out your y-intercept if you had a coordinate plane. But another way you can do it is you can just use your slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. So if we use the equation y equals mx plus b, slope-intercept form, we're given what our y value is and what our x value is because we're given an ordered pair, which is x comma y. So you can just substitute 3 in for x and -7 in for y and use our slope of 1/3, and we can figure out what our y-intercept is. So if we substitute, we use our point. If we plug in our y value, well, y is, if we look at our point, y is -7. That's y. Our m is our slope, so that is 1/3. And our b value, my bad. We don't know what our b value is, so we have to use our x value. So our x value is 3. So 3 goes in parentheses, and we don't know what b is. We're trying to figure out what b is. So I used x and y, and I used my slope. And again, the reason I'm doing this is because I was not given my y-intercept. If I was given the y-intercept, like in number 1, I would have just wrote the equation right away. So now simplify your equation. We have 1/3 times 3. Well, 1/3 times 3 is just 1 plus b. And then you just solve the one-step equation. How do you solve for b? You subtract 1 to both sides. -7 minus 1 is -8. So therefore, b equals -8. Well, now we just figured out what b is. So we know that our b is -8. And our slope is 1/3. So now we have our y-intercept, we have our slope, so that's enough to write our equation. So our equation is y equals m, which is 1/3, x plus b. Well, our b is negative, so it's going to be -8. And there's our equation. So number 3 is exactly like number 2. If you want to pause the video and give that one a try, I definitely recommend doing that. If not, I'm just going to start doing that problem. So write the equation of a line in slope-intercept form. So y equals mx plus b. that passes through the point, and that point is 2, 4, and has a slope of 3. Well, again, we're not given our y-intercept. We're just given some random point that the line passes through and its slope. So all we can do here is plug in what we have. We have x, we have y, and we have m. So we know y is 4, so let's plug that in. M is 3. We know x is 2. And we don't know what b is. Remember, b is our y-intercept. We were not given that in the problem like we were in number 1. So now we need to figure out what b is. So we can do 3 times 2, which is 6. And then we just solve for b, use the one-step equation. Inverse operations say to get rid of positive 6, we must subtract 6 to both sides. So therefore, b equals 4 minus 6, which is negative 2. And there's our equation right there. We have b, we have m. So y equals m, which is 3, x plus b, well, our b is negative, so it's minus 2. Make sure you don't put plus negative. Plus negative is the same thing as minus, so just put the subtraction sign. Okay, there's our equation of our line. Okay, so our last two equations, now these ones are a little bit different. So in number 4, it says write the equation of a line in slope-intercept form that passes through the points 2, 4, and negative 1, 10. So now, if you compare number 4 to 1 through 3, we don't even have our slope. We don't have our y-intercept, and we don't have our slope. So writing this in y equals mx plus b is going to be a little bit more difficult. When you're given 2 points and you're asked write the equation of the line, you always need to find your slope first. And to find your slope, you've already learned in a previous video, to find the slope, you do y2, your change in y, minus y1, over your change in x, x2 minus x1. It's also known as your rise over your run, or your rate of change. So you find y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So if we have our 2 points here, we have 2, 4, and negative 1, 10. I'm going to call this one x1, y1. That's our first xy. Our second xy, we're going to call x2, y2. Okay, and that just helps us to know where it goes in the slope formula. So now I'm going to do y2, which is 10, minus y1, which is 4, over x2, which is negative 1, minus x1, which is 2. And just like we did in order of operations, always simplify the numerator and denominator separately. 10 minus 4 is 6. Negative 1 minus 2 is negative 3. 6 divided by negative 3 is negative 2. So therefore, our slope is negative 2. And I'm going to highlight that in yellow just so we remember. So now we're at the point where we were at in numbers 2 and 3. We have a point that the line passes through, but it's not the y-intercept, and we have a slope. So when you're doing this next step, just like you did in number 2 and 3, when you have 2 points, you just pick whichever point you want. You're going to get the same thing no matter which point you use. I tend to try and use the one that's easier or the one that has more positives. So I'm going to use 2, 4. Okay, so we are going to use 2, 4 as our point. So I'm going to put that over here by the m. And remember, 2 is our x value, and 4 is our y. So now let's plug all of this stuff into y equals mx plus b. So y is 4, m is negative 2, x is 2, and b, that's what we're trying to solve for. That's our y-intercept. We don't know what that is. So negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. And then we just need to solve the one-step equation by adding 4 to both sides. 4 plus 4 is 8. So we know b equals 8. So now we have our equation. We know m is -2 and b is 8. So therefore our equation, I'm going to write it in the bottom left. Y equals m, which is -2, x plus b. Well, b is 8. And there's your answer. And if you would like to give number 5 a shot, it's just like number 4. So in number 5, we're again writing the equation of the line in slope-intercept form, and it's passing through the points -3, 5, and -4, 3. So just like in number 4, we're not given our slope, we're not given a y-intercept. All we're given is 2 points, so the first thing we have to do is find the slope. So to find slope, we're going to do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. It doesn't matter which one you call x1, y1, and which one you call x2, y2. I'm just going to do x1, y1 with this point, and x2, y2 with this point. So y2 is 3, minus y1 is 5, and our x2 is -4, minus our x1. Notice what our x1 is here. x1 is -3, but the formula says you have to subtract that number. So we're actually subtracting a negative number. One thing that will really help you whenever you see a negative and you're subtracting it, if you subtract a negative, that's the same thing as adding. So I'm going to change this to addition. Subtracting the negative is the same as addition. Okay, so now simplify the numerator. 3 minus 5 is -2. -4 plus 3 is -1. -2 divided by -1 is +2. So therefore, our slope is +2. So m equals 2. Okay, so now we have our slope, and what we need to find next is we need to figure out what's our y-intercept. Well, to find our y-intercept, we use our formula, y equals mx plus b, and pick whichever point you like better. In this case, it seems like they both have a negative, so it doesn't really matter which one you choose. I'm just going to pick the first one, -3, 5. And remember, it goes x, y. So if we plug that into our formula, y is 5, m we just found was 2, x is -3, and we don't know what b is. That's what we're trying to solve for. That's our y-intercept. So now simplifying this, 2 times -3 is -6, and solve the one-step equation by getting b by itself. So add 6 to both sides. 5 plus 6 is 11, so therefore b equals 11. So now we have enough to write our equation. We know that m is 2, and b is 11. So there's our equation, y equals 2x plus 11. Okay, so just taking a look at something extra here. What if we're given graphs and we're asked to write the equation? This is actually a lot easier than 1 through 5. So all we need to do to write an equation of a line, we need the y-intercept. I'm going to abbreviate that y-int. And we need slope. So our y-intercept is wherever the graph crosses the y-axis. So on number 6, it looks like it crosses at 0, 4. And to find our slope, we just need 2 points along the line. So it definitely goes through 0, 4. It also looks like it goes through 4, 1. So now to figure out the slope, it's definitely negative because the line's going down from left to right. We go down 1, 2, 3. So we're going down 3, and we're going right 1, 2, 3, 4. So therefore, our slope is -3/4. Our y-intercept is 0, 4, and that's enough to write our equation. Y equals m, which is our slope, x plus b. Well, b is our y-intercept, which is 4. And now taking a look at the next one, this is very, very similar to something that I said you really want to memorize from the last video. Anytime you have a horizontal line, you should be thinking y equals a number. Or just look at the line. What does y always equal? It always equals -1. It's just going directly through the y-axis at -1. Another way people think of this is the slope is, since it's a horizontal line, it's 0. Your y-intercept is 0, -1. So you can write the equation of the line, y equals m, which is 0, x, plus b, well, b is negative. 0 times anything is just 0, so that's why the equation is y equals -1. Okay, our next one, we have a horizontal, or a vertical line, my bad. Vertical line. Anytime you have a vertical line, you should be thinking x equals a number. And what number does the line go through on the x-axis? It's 3. So there's our equation right there, x equals 3. So if you have those memorized, if you see a vertical line, x equals a number, horizontal line, y equals a number, remember vertical line slope are undefined, and horizontal line slope is 0. That will really help. And then our last one here, looks like our slope is -3. Or not our slope, our y-intercept, sorry. And our slope is, it's definitely positive. It's going up from left to right. It's going up 1, 2, 3. So up 3. Over to the right 2. So up 3 over 2 means our slope is 3 over 2. So our equation is y equals our slope, y equals mx plus b. Remember, if your b is negative, just put minus. You don't need to put plus negative. Okay, and then that's it for today's lesson. As always, if you have any questions,